She said during our anniversary, "I'm only here to make my divorce look peaceful." But when the cameras stopped rolling, she packed her bags and left without a word. Our 10th anniversary was supposed to be special. Megan had planned it for weeks. A rooftop dinner, a string quartet, a photographer she found on Instagram, and a hashtag she spent a whole evening brainstorming. Hashtag 10 years strong. She said, "I just want to show people that true love still exists." But that night felt rehearsed. Every laugh, every touch, every glance toward the camera seemed choreographed. She corrected my posture, my tone, even the way I held her hand. "Smile more. Say that again, but softer," she whispered between flashes. When the photographer switched to video, Megan turned to the lens and delivered her line like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. "I'm so happy, even when I feel like giving up sometimes." The small crowd, friends, coworkers, strangers, laughed politely, thinking it was part of the charm. Then she leaned close, her breath warm against my ear. "I'm only here so the divorce looks peaceful." I went still, every sound around me fading. When the cameras turned off, she smiled for the last shot, picked up her purse, called an Uber, and walked away. No goodbye, no backward glance, just the echo of her heels on the rooftop tiles. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the half-cleared dining table, the remains of last night's show. Champagne glasses still half full, confetti from the rooftops scattered across the rug, her silver heels abandoned by the door like the last props after a play. I sat there in silence, the air thick with that heavy stillness you only notice when a voice that used to fill the space is gone. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications stacked one after another. A digital applause for a performance I hadn't realized I was part of. Megan had posted, "10 years of love and growth. Grateful for every moment." The photos were stunning, her radiant smile, my awkward half-grin, the candlelight reflecting in our glasses. Thousands of likes, heart emojis, comments, couple goals. "This gives me hope in love again. A decade and still glowing." But the caption felt like a eulogy, not a celebration. I got up, walked to our bedroom, and opened her closet. Empty. Not just clothes, hangers gone. Drawers cleared. Even her perfume bottles missing except one, the one she knew I hated. A deliberate ghost. On the bed, folded neatly, was a sheet of paper. Typed, not handwritten. Bullet points. Stage 1, separate finances discreetly. Stage 2, distance emotionally, maintain civility. Stage 3, public anniversary photos. Stage 4, file quietly, establish narrative. No salutation, no explanation. Just a blueprint, not for a marriage, but for an exit strategy. I sat on the edge of the bed, reading it over and over, each line colder than the last. 10 years condensed into logistics. I called her best friend, Laura, out of reflex more than anything. "Laura?" I said, voice low. "Do you know what's going on with Megan?" Silence. Then a sigh, the kind that carries guilt. "She didn't want me to tell you, but she's been talking to a lawyer for months. Something about managing optics." Optics? Yeah. He told her that keeping a perfect public image would help her case in court. Make her look stable, compassionate. That's why she did the anniversary post. He said judges notice social media now. I didn't speak for a moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Nervous. "So the dinner," I said finally, "was evidence?" Laura's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think so," she said. "If I play it right, he won't even see it coming." I thought she meant the photos. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat back down, staring at that ridiculous list. Stage 3, public anniversary photos. Stage 4, file quietly. It hit me like a truck. The flowers, the rooftop, the laughter. All of it had been staged for court, not for love. She wasn't preserving our marriage. She was building her case. That afternoon, I poured the remaining champagne into the sink, watched it fizz down the drain, and realized something strange. I wasn't angry yet, not even hurt, just detached, like I was still sitting in that restaurant, waiting for her to come back, pretending it was all a misunderstanding. I walked through our house, noticing all the absences. The missing coffee mugs she claimed were hers. The framed photos she'd taken down, probably to avoid them resurfacing in court as joint property. The spare toothbrush in the bathroom drawer gone. Even the dog's favorite blanket was missing. She'd taken that too, though she'd barely cared for him when she was here. Her absence was methodical, not emotional. She'd erased herself like a professional editor cutting a scene for continuity. That night, I sat in the dark living room, scrolling through the comments again. People still cheering for us, still believing in us. A stranger wrote, "If I ever find someone who looks at me the way you look at her, I'll never let go." I almost laughed, because the way I looked at her wasn't love anymore. It was disbelief. The look of a man watching the credits roll for a movie he didn't realize was fiction. In the background, the doorbell camera notification lit up my phone. Megan, returning briefly, hair tied up, no makeup, holding a stack of envelopes. She didn't knock, just slipped one under the door and left. Inside the envelope, legal notice, intent to file for divorce, grounds, irreconcilable differences. At the bottom, a sticky note in her handwriting. "Please don't make this messy." That was her last line. And just like that, 10 years of love became Exhibit A in her version of the truth. A week later, Megan texted me like nothing had happened. "Can we have one last therapy session? Just to end things with closure." Closure. That word again, the emotional bandage people use when they've already decided to leave but still want to look compassionate doing it. I agreed, partly out of confusion, partly because a small, stupid part of me still wanted to understand why she turned our life into a legal performance. Dr. Hayden's office was the same as always, minimalist, warm lighting, that faint eucalyptus scent that made you feel calm whether you wanted to or not. Megan was already there when I arrived, dressed like she always did for therapy. Neutral colors, soft sweater, no jewelry. She knew exactly how to present herself, vulnerable but composed. Dr. Hayden greeted us with his usual calm tone. "It's good to see both of you again. I understand there's been some distance lately." Megan clasped her hands dramatically. "I just want us to talk like adults. We've been through so much. I just want to feel seen." The performance was flawless. She even added a shaky breath at the end, the kind that tugs at sympathy. If I hadn't lived with her for 10 years, I might have believed it. Dr. Hayden nodded. "And you, how do you feel?" he asked me. "Like I'm living with an actress," I said evenly. She shot me a wounded look. "See, that's what I mean." He mocks my feelings. Everything becomes sarcasm. The therapist sighed softly, like a man bracing for impact. He suggested a 5-minute break. "I'll grab us some water." The moment the door clicked behind him, Megan's entire demeanor changed. The tears vanished. The fragile posture straightened. She pulled out her phone and dialed. "Yeah," she said quietly but clearly. "He's totally buying it. Dr. Hayden's gonna note emotional withdrawal and lack of empathy. My lawyer said a few more sessions like this and I'll look like the victim. The judge loves that stuff. Oh, and tell him I've been journaling. That's good optics too." I didn't breathe. My hands didn't shake. I just opened my voice recorder, hit record, and set the phone on my knee under the notepad. She kept talking. "No, he has no idea. He still thinks therapy might save us. Honestly, this whole thing's gonna pay off. Once I get the house, I'll be done pretending." Then she laughed. A quiet, careless laugh that cut through me like a blade. When Dr. Hayden returned, balancing 2 glasses of water, I sat up straight. Megan slipped her phone away instantly, tears back on cue. "Sorry," she said sweetly. "I was just checking on my sister." The doctor smiled politely. "Of course." He sat down, pen poised. "Now, before we continue, any thoughts from either of you about how therapy's been helping?" I looked at him, then at her, then back at him. "Yeah," I said calmly. "Actually, I have a question. Are your notes admissible in court?" He blinked. "In court? Well, yes, if they're subpoenaed by either party during divorce proceedings, they can be reviewed." "Why?" "Good," I said, sliding my phone from my lap. Because my wife just turned therapy into a courtroom weapon. Before either of them could react, I tapped play. Megan's voice filled the room. Yeah, he's totally buying it. My lawyer said a few more sessions will make me look like the victim. The judge loves that stuff. Dr. Hayden froze mid-sip. The color drained from Megan's face so fast it was almost comical. Her voice, still playing. Once I get the house, I'll be done pretending. I stopped the recording. Silence. The hum of the air vent suddenly sounded deafening. Dr. Hayden leaned back slowly, eyes shifting between us. Megan, he said carefully. Is that your voice? She swallowed. That was taken out of context. Out of context? I said, my voice steady. You were literally describing how you're manipulating therapy notes to strengthen your divorce case. Context doesn't save that. Dr. Hayden set down his notepad. For the record, he said softly, this fundamentally compromises the integrity of any therapeutic process. I'll have to terminate joint sessions effective immediately. Megan turned to me, panic flickering behind her eyes for the first time. You can't just record me like that. That's illegal. Actually, I replied, it's not. One-party consent state. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had no script, no prepared lines. Just silence. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and said evenly, I think we're done here. Dr. Hayden didn't stop me. He didn't say another word. Just watched as I walked to the door. As I stepped into the hallway, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the office mirror. The tears gone, her expression flat and calculating again. But this time it wasn't working. She'd lost the audience. Outside, the autumn wind hit my face, cold and clean. For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The performance was over, and I had the recording to prove it. I drove straight from Dr. Hayden's office to my attorney's downtown building, an old brick structure that smelled like paper, coffee, and quiet victories. Mr. Hendricks had been my family lawyer since my father's estate case. A man with gray hair, sharp suits, and a sharper sense of justice. His desk was a fortress of files, each labeled like a chapter in someone else's private disaster. When I handed him my phone and played the recording, he didn't interrupt. Just listened, elbows on the desk, fingers steepled. Megan's voice filled the room. Calm, confident, cruel. The same voice that once told me she loved me, now detailing how she'd fake emotions for court optics. When it ended, Hendricks leaned back, expression unreadable for a moment. Then he smirked. That's not therapy, John, he said. That's fraud. Emotional manipulation, strategic misrepresentation, intent to deceive a legal process. She's toast. He tapped his pen on the desk twice. You're filing first. Today. Within 48 hours, the divorce papers were drafted, signed, and filed. Irreconcilable differences with evidence attached. Hendricks made sure the recording was included under a motion for protective documentation, safely preserved for court review. The explosion came fast. Megan called 20 times in one afternoon. The first few were teary. We can fix this. Please, don't do this out of anger. The next 10 were venom. You're going to regret this, John. That recording is illegal. I'll destroy you for it. Hendricks didn't even blink. One-party consent, he said, pouring himself coffee. Totally legal in this state. She can scream all she wants. By the end of the week, she'd switched from calls to warfare. First, she filed an HR complaint at my job, claiming I'd been emotionally volatile and created a hostile home environment that might extend into the workplace. HR called me in. I showed them the court notice and explained the situation. They nodded sympathetically. One of them said, "We've seen this before." Next, she froze our joint checking account. Luckily, Hendricks had already advised me to transfer my half to a new one before filing. Her attempt fizzled like a match in the rain. When that failed, she escalated. Filed for a restraining order. Claimed I was emotionally intimidating, manipulative, and potentially violent. The irony almost made me laugh. The court date came a week later. Family courtroom. Beige walls, worn carpet, the quiet hum of the air conditioner competing with whispered gossip. Megan arrived in full costume. Beige cardigan, pearls, a tissue in her hand. Her lawyer, a young guy with slicked-back hair and too much confidence, stood beside her like a hired actor in a courtroom drama. Hendricks leaned toward me. "We'll let them talk first. Rope, meet neck." Megan's lawyer started his monologue. "Your Honor, my client has endured months of psychological manipulation, fear, and coercive control. She sought therapy in good faith, only to have her privacy violated through illegal recordings." "Illegal?" Hendricks interrupted smoothly. "One-party consent, Your Honor. Fully admissible. And the content directly disproves her claim of fear or intimidation." The judge, a middle-aged woman with a calm authority that could silence a hurricane, held up a hand. "Let's hear it." Hendricks pressed play. The courtroom filled with Megan's voice. "Yeah, he's totally buying it. My lawyer said a few more sessions will make me look like the victim. The judge loves that stuff." Each word was a nail in her case. The bailiff's eyes widened. Even the stenographer paused for half a second before catching up. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. Megan looked small, truly small, for the first time since I'd met her. Her lawyer shuffled papers as if they could somehow bury the sound that had just condemned them. The judge exhaled slowly, steepling her fingers. "Mrs. Miller?" she said, voice measured but cutting. "Is that you speaking?" Megan's lips trembled. "That was taken out of context," the judge finished for her. "Yes, I've heard that before. Unfortunately, context doesn't change intent. You were clearly strategizing to manipulate therapeutic records and court perception. Petition for restraining order. Denied." She glanced at Hendricks. "Counselor, please submit that recording to the clerk's office under seal. It may be relevant to property and custody considerations." Then she turned to Megan one last time. "If you feel unsafe, Mrs. Miller, you're free to leave the house. No one is keeping you there." The sentence landed like a verdict. Megan's face cracked. Not just her expression, but the mask itself. The perfect poise, the gentle tremble of her voice, the curated sadness, gone. In its place was pure shock. For the first time, she realized the audience wasn't on her side anymore. Outside the courtroom, Hendricks clapped me on the shoulder. "You handled that perfectly. Calm. Professional. Exactly what judges respect." I nodded, but I wasn't celebrating. There was no satisfaction in watching someone self-destruct, only a quiet kind of mourning. The kind that comes when you finally accept that love had been replaced by strategy long before you noticed. That night, I went home to the same silent house. The wine glasses were still where she'd left them, faint lipstick marks on the rim. I didn't clean them. Not yet. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, listening to the echo of her voice one last time. Proof that the person I married had become a stranger fluent in deception. The war was just beginning, but for the first time I wasn't the one unarmed. 3 days later, Megan finally moved out. No more arguments, no grand speech about heartbreak. Just boxes, tension, and the dull hum of movers' footsteps across the hardwood floor. Her mother hovered nearby, folding clothes with mechanical precision while radiating the kind of hostility that could peel paint. When they were nearly done, she turned to me, eyes sharp with fury. "You ruined her life," she said, voice trembling. "She loved you, and you humiliated her." I met her stare, calm and steady. "No," I said quietly. "She ruined the story she wrote." The words seemed to hit her harder than I expected. She blinked, hesitated, then looked away. Maybe for a brief moment she understood. After they left, the silence felt different. Not heavy anymore, just honest. The kind of silence that doesn't lie about what's gone. Mediation was scheduled for the following week. No more courtroom theatrics this time. Just a conference table, fluorescent lights, and a retired judge named Mr. Clark presiding over what was left of our life together. Megan sat across from me, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The flawless makeup, the soft lighting, the careful smiles, all gone. Her hair was tied back messily, dark circles under her eyes, fingers tapping anxiously on the table. For once, she looked real. Exhausted. Defeated. Mr. Clark adjusted his glasses and flipped through the files. "Let's address the recording first," he said, tone neutral. "Mrs. Miller, do you dispute the authenticity of this evidence?" Megan hesitated, eyes darting toward her lawyer. Then, barely audible, she muttered, "It's out of context." Mr. Clark sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Mrs. Miller, the context is that you deliberately misrepresented yourself during therapy to manipulate legal outcomes. That isn't context. That's strategy, and not a moral one." Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Megan didn't speak. She just stared at the table. I didn't feel triumphant. I'd already seen her collapse. This was just the echo. Mr. Clark turned to me. "Mr. Miller, your proposal?" I slid the folder across the table. "Half the savings. She keeps her car. No alimony. Clean break." He looked mildly surprised. "That's generous, considering the circumstances." "It's fair," I said. "I'm not here to punish her. I just want it done." The room went quiet. Even the ticking wall clock seemed to pause. Megan's lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. She just stared at the folder like it was the final script she didn't have the strength to memorize. After a long silence, she finally whispered, "Fine, whatever." And that was it. No camera crews, no filters, no carefully chosen hashtags. Just a few signatures, the rustle of paper, and the sound of her chair sliding back as she stood up to leave. Mr. Clark gathered the documents and nodded respectfully. "You both have my condolences," he said softly, "for the marriage that once was, and the peace you might find after it." I thanked him and watched Megan walk out. For a moment, I expected her to turn back, maybe offer one last line, one last performance for closure. But she didn't. She just kept walking, her heels clicking down the hall until the sound faded completely. When she was gone, I sat there for another minute. The mediator had already left, the room empty. The sun coming through the blinds cast thin bars of light across the table, dividing everything neatly, hers, mine, gone. I ran a hand through my hair and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. It wasn't relief exactly, more like the quiet after a storm, when you're not sure what's left, but at least you know the sky's finally clear. Later that evening, I walked through the house again. The spaces she used to dominate felt larger now, almost hollow. Her perfume had faded from the hallway. The framed anniversary photo was still on the mantel. Both of us smiling, the city lights behind us, but even that looked like a lie printed in high definition. I picked it up, studied it for a while, then set it face down. Not out of anger, just honesty. The next morning, I made coffee and watched the sunlight climb across the empty dining table. No posts, no hashtags, no audience waiting to be impressed. Megan had always needed the world to clap for her version of happiness. But the thing about applause is, it fades when the curtain falls. And this time, the curtain had fallen for good. A month later, it was final. The ink dried quietly, no dramatic goodbyes, no last-minute reversals. Just signatures, envelopes, and a silence that felt cleaner than any apology ever could. The marriage of 10 years reduced to 12 pages and one court seal. I kept the house. She got her car, $60,000, and, of course, her followers. It felt fitting. She'd always measured life in likes and validation. Now she could keep her audience. I kept the quiet. From what mutual friends have said, she's living with that work friend she once swore was just helping her with marketing. Their new apartment looks like a showroom. All white walls, big windows, and ring lights in every corner. She's filming self-help videos now, apparently. Titles like Healing After Toxicity and Reclaiming Your Narrative. In her world, she's the survivor of a loveless marriage, a phoenix reborn through betrayal. Her mom still tells anyone who'll listen that I took everything, that her poor daughter gave her best years to a cold man who never understood her. At first, I tried correcting people, explaining that I gave her half our savings, that I never wanted revenge, that all I did was stop pretending. But eventually, I stopped. Let them have their story. I had mine. The house feels different now. Not haunted, just unoccupied by performance. I repainted the bedroom, a deep, calm gray instead of the pale pink she'd chosen, for light and warmth. Bought a simple leather couch to replace the white sectional she always posed on for photos. Even the kitchen feels freer, like the walls can breathe again without her constant commentary about aesthetic lighting. I deleted every post with her face in it. Instagram tried to remind me of our anniversaries, our vacations, the smiles we performed for strangers. Each memory had the same hollow shine, bright, but without weight. I pressed delete each time and felt something loosen quietly inside me. Dr. Hayden sent me a handwritten note, a rare thing these days. John, I'm sorry I didn't see the manipulation sooner. Therapists like to think we can read everything between the lines. I missed it this time. I hope you find peace. I smiled reading it. He didn't owe me an apology, but I appreciated the honesty. At least someone else had stopped pretending, too. Hendrix, on the other hand, celebrated in his own way. He printed the audio waveform of Megan's recording, the jagged line of her voice rising and falling in perfect rhythm, and framed it on his office wall. The plaque beneath read, "The Therapy Confession Case." He said it reminded him that truth has a sound. Sometimes friends ask if I regret it, if I miss her, or if I ever think about what might have been had I not hit record. I tell them the truth. No, I don't regret a thing. Not because I didn't love her once. I did deeply. But because I finally understand what love isn't. It isn't performance. It isn't strategy. It isn't something you have to prove to a crowd. What I miss isn't her. It's the quiet moments I thought were real. The mornings when she'd hum in the kitchen, barefoot, hair messy, sunlight hitting her face just right. The part of me that believed that version of her existed, that's what I mourned. But mourning is easier than living in a lie. Some evenings, I still catch myself expecting her footsteps in the hallway. Then I remember. She's out there, under studio lights, telling the world how she survived me. And I let it go. Now my mornings start with silence. I make my coffee, open the windows, let real sunlight in. Not for a post, not for a photo, just because it feels good. The air smells like paint and pine wood instead of her perfume. The house creaks in familiar ways again, like it's stretching after a long sleep. One night, as I was locking up, I stood in the doorway and looked around. The walls, once cluttered with decor she chose for the aesthetic, were bare now, waiting for something genuine. I didn't rush to fill them. Maybe someday I will. Or maybe they'll stay that way, honest, unfiltered, quiet. Peace doesn't look like what I expected. It doesn't cheer or announce itself. It just sits with you quietly while you breathe, reminding you that stillness can be sacred. I lost a wife, but I found my self-respect, my calm, my truth. The parts she couldn't edit or frame or hashtag. Because home isn't just walls. It's the one place you can live without an audience. And for the first time in 10 years, I finally feel at home.